Anil Patibandla. I'm president of HARMONIA. Today I have the honor and privilege of introducing Mr. Farooq Mitha. So I plan to read this because I thought I have a paper, I put it on the podium and read it. Now I don't have a podium, so I'm going to wing this. So if I miss anything, I'm sorry. So as Mr. Mitha serves in the Biden's administration as the Director of Office of Small Business Programs. And as Director, Mr. Mitha is responsible for $140 billion, that's right, with a B, of small business awards in DoD. As Director, Mr. Mitha works with undersecretaries, secretaries, military leaders, and major commands in making them include the small businesses in their planning for current and future needs. Also, Mr. Mitha works with the DoD in advanced research, applied research, advanced manufacturing, and to include small business capabilities to improving the industrial complex. Mr. Mitha, in my opinion, has a unique perspective because he has served as the president CEO of Imbune Group before he joined the administration. So he knows and understands, as small businesses, our perspectives. Mr. Mitha was a Fulbright Fellow in Amman, Jordan. He did some research, economic research for Middle East, and also organized a Track 2 conference for diplomacy. Mr. Mitha got his law degree from University of Florida, Go Gators, Levin School of Business, and a BS from University of South Florida. I think I got everything. Two other notes. I know it's a keynote speech, closing, but I've asked him and he agreed to take a couple of questions after. And I also want to congratulate him because he has a new addition to his family recently. And with all that, he still agreed to come here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Anil. We have to give Anil a round of applause because nobody has memorized my bio like that before. And he was like 99% accurate. So thank you. Really glad to be here with Thai DC for the conference and to give the keynote. I really do want to hear from all of you, and I'll tell you why. So I'm going to speak for 10, maybe 15 minutes at the most, and we'll save some time for questions and comments. But again, really glad to be here. Glad to be doing things in person again. I actually took my first trip in this job yesterday to Dayton, Ohio to visit AFRL. And I've done a couple of these things now in person. So I'm slowly, we're trying to get back out there again and meet with people. And it's great to do things on Zoom. I do them on Zoom. It's a good way to lower the barrier of people having to travel and us having to travel in the government. But there's no replacement for meeting people face to face and in person. So thank you, all of you who are here. And I know there's a lot of people that are virtual as well. As Anil said, I'm the Director of Small Business Programs at DoD. My office actually sits in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. We're responsible for overseeing all of our small business programs, our small business spend, our small business outreach. But as many of you know who are probably doing business with DoD, we have a lot of small business offices across our military departments and defense agencies. Every service and defense agency has an Office of Small Business Programs. They report into their own reporting chain, but they have a dotted line report to me. And I oversee a small business workforce of about 750 plus small business professionals, and they're embedded all across DoD, and they're essentially working to influence acquisition strategies, make sure that we're setting aside contracts for small businesses, make sure we're implementing our subcontracting goals with the primes and they're working hard every single day. My responsibility is for their training, their credentialing, and to make sure that they have leadership support from the Secretary's office to do their job and to help make sure that we're giving maximum opportunities for small businesses. So just a little bit about me. I actually served in this office 10 years ago in the Obama administration as the special assistant. and now 10 years later I'm running it. But I also had my own small business, as Anil mentioned, where I was doing work partly with DoD as well. And I came into this job knowing that we needed to make a lot of change and that things needed to get done quickly, given the importance of small business, both to supporting the warfighter, but also in supporting our nation's economy. But some of the data that I will share with you, I wasn't aware of until I came in. And when I came in, I saw some good and I saw some bad. And by the way, my job was a day one appointment from the president. That's in the few administrations that I've seen come and go. I've never seen this job be a day one appointment. It's usually a 1 year or 18 months later appointment. And I think it's because the president and the secretary realized and understood the importance of small business. We were coming out of COVID, we're still in COVID, and all the impacts that have affected our industrial base. So I came in and I saw a few good things. I saw that we've met our prime contracting goal for 8 years in a row now, which is great. I saw that we had been spending record dollars on small business prime contracting. In FY20 and in FY21, DoD as a whole spent over $80 billion on small business prime contracting. So when Anil said 140, you add that plus we're responsible for the subcontracting awards, that's where you get the number from. And I saw that we've got a lot of good activity across the department related to small business. We've got record commercialization from SBIR. We've been engaging non-traditionals better. We've been using commercial style contracting with new prototyping authorities. There is goodness happening at the DoD. The negative that I saw was that we've lost a big chunk of our industrial base over the last decade. I was astonished to see that our prime contractors have decreased in the last decade by 43%. And if we allow that current trend to continue, we could lose an extra 15,000 suppliers. So my number one focus is what do we do to reverse that trend, and how can we reinvigorate our industrial base and leverage small business capabilities to meet our mission requirements. And that's my number one focus when I talk about small businesses with other senior leaders in the Pentagon. It's not about the goal. We've met the goal, we're spending the money. It's really about capabilities and how do we change the culture and influence the culture within the DoD with the buyers to realize that small businesses are key to our national security. And without small businesses, the mission doesn't get accomplished. And Boeing and Lockheed Martin and Raytheon can't do what they do without small businesses. So that message is coming from the secretary, so it's not just me. We've had a couple of engagements already with small businesses from our leadership, and we'll do plenty more. But back to the substance. There's a few things that are big priorities for me. One is bringing stability to our small business programs. When I came in, I saw that one of my programs in my office, the Mentor Protege program, was zeroed out of the president's budget. It was killed in the defense-wide review. Congress gave us a little bit of money because they disagreed with that assessment, and I wanted to get it back in the budget, and that was the first thing that I did. We did a relook of our 2022 budget in the early days of the administration, and I made sure that we connected Mentor Protege to Build Back Better, which you're hearing all about in the news now, and we got it back in the budget. And we've connected it to the president's diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, small business development efforts. So we got some stability there. We've got 5 years of funding that we've got in our FIDA plan. But that's not the only program. Then I saw that SBIR, which many of you know about, the authorization ends at the end of this fiscal year. That's unacceptable. We've got the Rapid Innovation Fund. Who's heard of the Rapid Innovation Fund? Anybody? Has anybody been a RIF awardee? Twice. Do you know that the RIF has not been funded for 3 fiscal years in a row? That is a travesty, in my opinion. So I've been on the road talking to industry, Congress, and the building about RIF, because everybody talks about the valley of death, and how do we bridge the valley of death? How do we help SBIRs buy some time where they can continue developing their technology before they get brought into a program and commercialized? Well, RIF was established for that purpose. We've seen almost a 60% commercialization rate from the RIF program, yet it hasn't been funded for 3 years. What else can I talk about? The National Security Innovation Network is a really small program. It works with entrepreneurs, startups. They do hackathons, pitch days. They live off of a congressional ad every year. And if Congress wants to give it to them, great. They've wanted to up until now, but that's what was happening with the RIF, and we know where RIF is today. We need to have long-term planning for these programs. Otherwise, industry's not going to want to tailor their business models to want to participate. Government sponsors, and Mentor Protege as an example, the service has said, well, we don't want to be part of Mentor Protege DoD. If it's not going to be funded, why should we do it? We don't have the money to do it on our own. So government's not bought in without planning, industry's not bought in, and then who suffers? The warfighter, the economy, our technological capable edge of competitiveness, all of that suffers. So I want to make sure that we are really planning for these programs, and whether it's from internal DoD or the Hill or both, all of us working together, that we set our small business programs, and there's many others, on a path to sustainability and long-term planning, whether it's an authorization that's needed long-term or permanency, which I think we should do for SBIR, or whether it's funding. So that's a big priority of mine. Another priority of mine, which ties in with the administration's priorities, are how do we do 3 things? And the president signed executive orders early on in the first few months of the administration on these things. One is advance equity in our procurements. The second is strengthening our domestic supply chains. And the third is increasing competition in our industrial base, not just at DoD, but these are interagency-wide efforts. How many of you know about category management? So one of the earliest things that we've been spending a lot of time on, which I think ties to all of these things, but other things as well, is how do we reform category management to make it more, I guess, I'm not a big fan of it overall, but how do we make it better for small businesses? And we've done that. We've now made some changes which will be more formally rolled out in the coming weeks, but we're now giving Tier 2 category management credit for any award to a certified small business. So if you're an SDB, an SDVOSB, if you're a woman-owned business, if you're in a hub zone, you will now get Tier 2 credit for category management acquisitions. That's a big deal because it eliminates the conflict where buyers are thinking, well, I'm being held accountable by OMB to use these contracts that are already in place, but I know that I got to meet a small business goal, and I know that we need to support small businesses more, but some of these businesses aren't on these contract vehicles. So we've eliminated that problem. I think that's going to be a big win for industry. We're also going to set goals and targets for recruiting new entrants to our vehicles, having more consistent onboarding. I mean, I was in industry. I would never know when there's an onboarding onto a vehicle, right? Like you're just supposed to magically know about it somehow or go to 20 different websites to figure it out. I want to streamline that, and I'm making my website, business.defense.gov, a single point of entry for small businesses, at least with DoD, to come and get information. It's not all the way where it needs to be, but we have started to move in that direction. We link to a lot of small business programs, and we're going to have more forecasting and other information in the months ahead, but we've got to develop that. It's been completely lost since I was previously in this organization. So we have a lot of work to do there. But the president is hyper-focused on this. We're, as you may have heard, are tripling our small disadvantaged business goal by 2025. That means in FY22, we're going to have to federal-wide achieve 11%. And then in FY23, it's going to be more until we get to 15. That's a great opportunity for a lot of you. And whether you're a self-certified SDB or an 8A company, there will be a lot of emphasis on all of our socioeconomic groups. So that's one where we've actually increased our goal. The last thing I'll talk about is cybersecurity, and then we'll open it up for some conversation. I know a lot of folks are curious about CMMC and are concerned about CMMC. Earlier this year, when we first came into the administration, the deputy secretary essentially said that she wanted us to do a deep dive into CMMC and essentially hit the pause button so we could go and do an assessment of the program. We've been doing that for several months now because we want to make sure that whatever the final resolution is, we get it right. There are not conflicting policies, and that we are making it easy for small businesses. And I want to emphasize that the small business emphasis on that strategic relook that we've been doing was at the forefront. I can't get ahead of the secretary and say what that's going to be, but I can tell you that we've been seriously focused on the small business aspect of it, and the path forward is going to be simple, it's going to be clear, and we will be providing resources to small companies on how to comply. Now, I've already been doing that ahead of whatever the final outcome is, and that's going to be rolled out soon. My office has stood up a website. It's called, or we've invested in a capability, is probably the better way to say it, called Project Spectrum. The website is www.projectspectrum.io. It is a free service. We're making that investment to provide training to small businesses on cyber readiness, whether it's NIST 800-171 or some of the CMMC levels. We're providing self-assessments. So if you're a small business, you can go and create an account, register your company, and actually do a self-assessment that lets you know where you are on the cyber readiness spectrum. We're doing tool assessments. We're not picking winners and losers of tools, but we're providing information to industry on what tools are out there, what their capabilities are to help them, and they can make a decision if they want to use it or not. And lastly, we are providing cyber SME support to small businesses so they can get that one-on-one coaching. We're focusing that right now on companies that are in the Mentor Protege program as a pilot, but we'll be expanding it in the months ahead once we kind of get a good baseline of companies from that small group that we're working with right now. So that's something that we've invested in at our cost to help you buy down risk and to provide you those services. And it's an evolving capability, so we're going to be adding functionalities to it in the months and years ahead. But it's something that I'm prioritizing in my organization, and we're working closely with SBA and other agencies on how they can leverage it as well. So there's a lot of work happening. There's a lot going on. I could go on and on and on about all these things, but I wanted to make sure that we carved out some time so I can hear from you. I'll just wrap by saying that I am responsible for submitting the department's small business strategy to Congress. We developed the small business strategy as a department in 2019. It wasn't bad, but when I came in and looked at it, like 0 of it had been implemented, like literally, maybe not 0, maybe 10%. So I'm refreshing it, adding some new thoughts and ideas and challenges and action items into that strategy. But what we have isn't bad. It's currently on our website, and it's fine. You can take a look at it. But part of that is reducing barriers to entry for small businesses. And I really want to hear from you. We actually had and I hope some of you may have seen it, we had a Federal Register notice up that closed last week. It was up for about 45 days. And it was to get public comments from small businesses on how do we reduce the barriers to entry and what barriers they're facing. We got, last I checked, which was 2 weeks ago, we had about 150 or so comments, and we've gotten some more that have been emailed to us directly. So we're going to use that to see, okay, what's the low-hanging fruit that we can go after easily, where I can, with the stroke of a pen, hopefully do some stuff. Some may need regulatory reform, some may need congressional help. We're going to put them into those buckets and then start going after the ones that we think are reasonable and that we can actually get done. I don't want to spend time studying the problem and getting a FFRDC to go and do a survey for 2 years and then come back and, oh, we already know what the problems are. Let's start getting after these things now, and let's start moving as quickly as we can. I have limited time as my job as a political appointment, so I don't want to waste time. I want to get at it. So that's why I want to hear from you, because I want to be able to take ideas back. One of the ideas that I have is, and Congress has kind of alluded to this in the strategy, is reducing the entry points into the defense marketplace. there's right now dozens of websites with dozens of information, and some of them use beta.sam.gov to post their opportunities, and some of them don't. If you go to DIU, they just post them on their website. And you may have a great capability, and you may be a commercial company that wants to do business with us, but if you don't know what the heck DIU is or what their website is, you wouldn't even know to go check it out and put a white paper or a slide deck in for one of their opportunities. So I want to bring some of those things together over the months ahead, and more to come. I mean, that type of stuff takes some time within DoD, but there's some easy things that we can do, which we've started to do. So I'll stop there and open it up for any questions or comments.
Hello.
Hi.
As you may have heard, I represent a lot of small businesses, and hopefully this is low-hanging fruit. But a repeated concern of small businesses doing work with DoD is, number one, the need to have an approved accounting system. And it's a circular issue. DFAS won't approve small businesses' accounting systems unless you have a contract, yet you can't get contracts unless you have an approved accounting system. And so often you can't get into the small business contracting market because you can't get what you can't get until you get the contract.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it takes quite some time. And, you know, it's just a barrier. It's an absolute barrier to entry. So what happens is that you team with other companies or you're a subcontractor, but it's a really hard thing to get around.
Yeah.
Second thing, security clearances, which, you know, are obviously very necessary for a lot of the work. You know, there's been mentor-protege, big push on joint ventures. There's been this issue about SBA passing rules saying that joint ventures can use the security clearance of one of the members. GAO, in a protest, said that they'll uphold a protest where an agency refuses to honor that. DoD consistently says, we will not honor it. And GAO can't enforce it because they're an arm of Congress, so it's only recommendations. Only a federal court can enforce it. There will be a protest going to federal court to enforce it. But if your office could talk to the Defense Security Service and just resolve this issue. Otherwise, what I have done with the clients is trying to coordinate this very artificial situation where you have a large contractor or a contractor supposedly subcontracting to a small business and then therefore creating a need for a security, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that's another.
I'm not familiar with that GAO issue.
It just was issued about three weeks ago.
Okay. Yeah, if you can, let me dig into that. I don't, you know, I just started doing things in person.
I know.
I don't have a business card.
Yeah.
It's killed me yesterday and today now, but I
Yeah.
do want to get that
The
information
last thing
from
is,
you. Or Anil can send it to me.
yeah.
He knows how to get a hold of it.
OTAs for small businesses. You could get them in. They're not being used as well as they could, other transaction authority, but that's something your office should consider.
Yeah, so a couple things on your first point, and the second point is while connected to, I think when we have used OTAs, it's been a way for us to get to non-traditionals without the need for these approved accounting systems. But I will talk to DFAS and DCAA and see what more we can do there. We are using OTAs as much as we can. One of the challenges I have seen is that some contracting shops don't have OTA authority. So but I have seen a much bigger use of them. In fact, our R&D industrial base has grown by 10% over the last decade, as opposed to every other sector where it's gone down. I think it's because we've used OTA authorities more and we're using more. We have to now get to a place where we can actually go into production and bring those technologies over, which is why programs like RIF and others are really important to me, but point taken. But I definitely want to get information on the GAO opinion.
Quick, can I ask, do you have time? Quick question. So SBIR Phase 3, is it possible to, maybe this won't take a lot of new regulation or anything, but just educate contract officers on using Phase 3?
Yes.
Because there's situations where we've talked to sponsors about teaming with other small businesses, because a group of small businesses together may be able to do a substantial size project that would normally go to a much larger contractor with it. and they can do sole source. There's no limitation in subcontracting, so even if we did that on our contract, we don't have to do, 50% of the work. It can be a very flexible arrangement, but most of the time the COs, they've never done a phase 3, or they don't know how to use that, or they don't believe they could actually do a sole source. And I know our
That's
CEO
still a problem
probably
after all
sees a lot
these
of,
years.
so it's an education program for people.
Yeah, I'll take that on. So one of actually our do outs from our original small business strategy was to develop that kind of training for KOs, and I don't know what's out there today, but I'll add that in. We'll definitely do that.
Right,
and I work closely with our director for defense pricing and contracting, and they oversee all the KOs. I oversee the small business professionals. So I train them every year, but that's not where the pain point is, I think. So we'll work on that.
Okay, thanks.
So I have the mic. So two questions.
Sure.
One, you mentioned a lot of things about DoD and the improvements you're making. You didn't say anything about the non-DoD, the whole civilian sector. Are you doing anything similar to what in other agencies, or mainly focusing on DoD?
So my job is DoD. However,
I
on
see.
the changes that we're making to category management and implementing the President's Small Disadvantaged Business Goal, there are some interagency efforts that we're working on, and there'll be more of that I'll be involved in. And DoD, because we spend so much, we are able to influence those. I mean, the category management reforms wouldn't be done without DoD, like straight up.
Right.
They just wouldn't have been done. So we can help influence, and we have a big voice, but we don't oversee it, but we are working on other efforts like that.
So the general one complaint, and you probably know that being in the business that you're in, that somewhere somebody should look at why any contract should go more than maybe 2 or 3 times to the same company. That's an easy one to check. And that needs to stop, because then you're getting no new blood, because as a citizen and as a taxpayer, we want fresh ideas and fresh blood. So it gets very intertwined with the agency and the people there and the companies. So 90% of the contracts for the small businesses or new entrants, they just don't even, there's always an incumbent, so you forget. So when you're looking at the primes going down, that is the prime reason why primes are going down. So you got to connect the dots. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, and I think part of this interagency process that we're looking at with OMB and SBA and others in the White House is, removing unnecessary or overburdensome past performance requirements for an RFP or to onboard onto a vehicle. We're thinking through how we can, how we can attract new entrants and what that's going to take. There's been some talk about even doing more with the simplified acquisition threshold. That's legislative, but I think sometimes when I look at the simplified acquisition threshold, it's not that simple. So I want to see what we can do on the regulatory side to reduce some of the procedures. So point well taken. Okay, well, thank you all for inviting me, and I'm glad to be here. Oh.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks so much.